Okay, so let's actually take this question about 500 marks and make it even like simpler. Let's divorce it even further from the story because this is even more of a fundamental issue than I think we all think it is. And the question is, what is the value of a mark? Like, okay, for example, we know what the value of a US dollar is. Even if you don't live in the US, if I remember correctly, the currency exchange rate all over the world, from what I understand, is set to the US dollar. So even if you don't use the US dollar, we all know what the value of a dollar is. So if Sarah had said something like, Farah's yelling at Nesta because Nesta spent $500, we can quantify in our heads sort of what $500 spent, like what you could spend $500 on, you know? 500 marks could literally be anything. Like the exchange rate for that could be a lot higher or a lot lower than we think it is. And as a disclaimer, I'm not an expert on this or on money or anything. I am just a humble theorist, a book talk girly with a healthy interest in economics. So this is kind of a personal story time, which will illustrate the point of like how far a dollar would go versus like another currency. I spent a few years being obsessed with this toaster. This is the Balmuda toaster. It like steams your bread as you toast it and it creates like an elevated toaster experience. Like this was like on my bucket list of things to own in my life. And this is specifically like a Japanese brand. And I was like, one day I'm going to own this toaster. This toaster is $300. Like it's $300 in America. So my husband and I, we went last year in 2023 to Japan for our honeymoon. This is a Japanese company. And in my mind, I was like, we're going to be in Tokyo for a while. I want to take like a couple hours and find the Balmuda flagship store and buy this toaster and bring it home. And we knew that there was going to be an exchange rate between the yen and the dollar. But then when we got to Japan, our US dollar actually went a lot further than we thought it did. We spent out of like our like spending money to go to Japan. Like we were under budget and we spent money. So then finally, my husband, he indulges me. We find the Balmuda toaster store and we go to the toaster store. And it is a beautiful experience. I know I'm talking about like a toaster store, like a kitchen appliance store, but I had hyped up this toaster, specifically this toaster in this color, for years at this point. To make this even more embarrassing, I have a toaster oven like at home, and it's a good toaster oven. It does air frying too. But no, I wanted this toaster, this $300 toaster. But then we roll up with our yen and we look at the price and we do like our little exchange rate thing. Like we check like an exchange rate calculator or something. To buy that toaster in Japan versus America, it would have been like a little over $200, like 2/3 of the price of the American Balmuda toaster. And the only reason why I didn't buy it is because all of the measurements were in Celsius and we were worried about the voltage. We were very worried about like getting it in the suitcase and getting it past the airport security. So my husband and like our friends talked me out of buying the toaster. But this is a story about how far money goes. It is also the story of a toaster that was way out of my budget, especially in America. But this is exactly the point. Like we don't know how far Prythian money goes. We don't know whether Rhysand and Feyre were just yelling about 500 marks because of the principle of Nesta putting it on their tab, or because 500 marks is actually a lot of money. And that is why I have a really hard time judging Nesta for spending 500 marks at the bar. You could spend 500 marks at like a tavern or a bar or whatever, just like getting the occasional drink, maybe buying a round for somebody. Bars are expensive. And again, we also have to consider the fact that these people do party. They do go to Rita's. They probably spend about $500 just in general. I think Nesta just put it on their tab, like just because. But like, I just don't think that 500 marks is as much money as we think it is. And this is even without considering the fact that like they're considering like their drinking like fun and then her drinking self-destructive. Even if it is self-destructive, they also drink and party self-destructively, or they had before, so they don't really have any room to judge either. So it's just not fair the way they treat her. And this is also kind of why maybe, just maybe, Sarah, don't put hard and fast numbers on stuff like this, because you're always going to have a reader, or many readers, because we're all talking about this, talking about how these numbers work, because you're saying, oh, you spent 500 marks at the bar. We're now trying to figure out what a mark is, and that's not what your goal was, Sarah.